They photoshopped themselves onto Everest. What happened next destroyed everything. June 5th, 2016, Kathmandu. A couple stands before cameras, tears streaming, holding summit photos. First Indian couple to conquer Everest. Together, the nation celebrates. Heroes overnight. But something's wrong with these photos. Very wrong. Their boots change colors between shots. Jackets shift from red to blue. The lighting is identical in every different photo. Then a software engineer sees them online and his blood runs cold. Those aren't their photos. They're AIs, stolen, badly photoshopped, and what he does next will expose a scandal that goes far deeper than one couple's lie. From climbers who summited when the mountain was closed, to a fraud so brazen it fooled an entire country for 4 years. These are the biggest Everest lies ever caught on camera. The perfect lie, June 5th, 2016. Dinesh and Tarakeshwari Rathod stood before a press conference in Kathmandu, glowing with exhaustion and pride. This married couple of 8 years had just achieved something extraordinary. They claimed to be the first Indian couple to summit Mount Everest together. The story was perfect, almost too perfect. Dinesh and Tarakeshwari weren't random thrill seekers. They were police constables in Maharashtra, India, respected members of their community with real careers and responsibilities. They had been climbing together for years. In 2014, they claimed to have conquered the Aussie 10, climbing the 10 highest peaks in Australia. When they returned from Australia claiming success, local media celebrated them as heroes. They were the talk of their town. But it wasn't enough. They wanted to prove themselves on the highest peak of all. It became an obsession. They made a vow. They would never have children until they conquered Everest together. For 2 years after Australia, they saved every rupee. They trained relentlessly. In spring 2016, they finally made their attempt on the world's highest mountain. At the press conference, Dinesh's voice shook with emotion as he held up their summit photos. "We were committed that we would not give birth to a child until we climb Mount Everest with pride," he said. "Now, we want to become parents." The press conference erupted in applause. Back home in India, they were hailed as heroes. Front page news, television interviews, everything was perfect. Except for one tiny problem. The photos they were showing everyone were completely fake. The software engineer who caught them, Satyarup Siddhanta, a software engineer in Bangalore, was casually scrolling through news articles about Everest climbs when he saw the Rathod summit photos plastered all over Indian media. His jaw dropped. Those weren't their photos. They were his photos from when he climbed Everest just 2 days earlier on May 19th. Imagine that moment. You risk your life climbing the world's tallest mountain. You take incredible summit photos as proof of what you accomplished. And then days later, you're watching TV and seeing those exact same photos with different people's faces pasted over yours. Satyarup did what any normal person would do in 2016. He absolutely blew up on Facebook. "This is so amazing," he posted. "They took my pics and photoshopped their image of the summit and got certificates too. Shame on you officers from Pune." That one Facebook post completely upended their lives. The mistakes were embarrassing. After Satyarup's comments, mountaineering experts started investigating. When they looked at the photos more closely, they found mistakes so obvious it was honestly embarrassing. In one photo, Tarakeshwari was wearing red climbing boots. In another photo, supposedly taken just minutes later on the same summit, she was wearing completely different yellow boots. Now, I haven't climbed Everest, but I'm pretty sure when you're 29,000 feet up, gasping for air in the death zone, where every step could kill you, you're not stopping to change your shoes for better Instagram photos. But it got worse. Their jackets were changing colors between photos. Their oxygen masks appeared and disappeared like magic tricks. The shadows and lighting were identical in every single different photo. It's like they didn't even try to make it believable. They just took Satyarup's photos, poorly photoshopped their faces over his, and called it a day. Here's what's crazy. The Nepal Department of Tourism, whose actual job is to verify Everest summits, looked at these obviously fake photos and said, "Yep, looks legit." They gave them official certificates. To be fair, Nepal back then wasn't exactly a tech powerhouse. In 2011, barely 9% of the population had internet access. The system for checking summit photos wasn't built to spot fakes. But still, the boldness of their lie was staggering. The Rathods claimed they reached the summit at 6:25 a.m. local time. But mountaineering experts pointed out that based on the height and angle of the sun in their stolen photos, it was clearly around 11 a.m. or noon. It's like claiming you took a photo at midnight while the sun is clearly shining bright in the background. The vanishing Sherpas. Here's another red flag everyone initially missed. When investigators tried to track down the Sherpa guides who supposedly led them to the summit, Furba and Pemba, these guys had mysteriously vanished. They couldn't be reached for questioning. They had disappeared into thin air. Other climbers who were actually on the summit that morning confirmed that no one else was there when the Rathods claimed to have reached the top. The summit was empty, except for legitimate climbers. Nepal officially launched an investigation, but it was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos that don't match, Sherpa guides who don't exist. Timing, oh, that makes no sense. On August 30th, 2016, they were slapped with a 10-year climbing ban from Nepal. But that wasn't even the worst part. Remember, these people were police officers. They wore uniforms. They served their community. They were supposed to be examples of integrity and honesty. When the Maharashtra police found out their employees had become international symbols of fraud, they launched their own investigation. In August 2017, more than a year after the fake summit, they fired them both. Additional Commissioner Sambhaji Patil told media that the couple had shared misleading information and brought disrepute to the Maharashtra Police Department. These two people risked their entire careers, their reputations, their futures, all for fake photos that a software engineer spotted in seconds of casual web browsing. But here's what's wild. The Rathods weren't the only ones pulling this kind of stunt. In fact, this was just the beginning. The climbers who summited when the mountain was closed. May 26, 2019. 3 climbers from small villages in India were about to attempt one of the most audacious claims in Everest history. Their names, Vikas Rana, Shobha Benwal, and Ankush Kasana. These weren't wealthy adventure tourists from Mumbai or Delhi. These weren't professional climbers with sponsorship deals. They were from tiny rural villages where nothing exciting ever happens. Shobha was only 21 years old. For these 3, an Everest summit wouldn't just be a personal achievement. It would literally transform their entire family's social status forever. They had scraped together every rupee they could find for this expedition. Everything they had went into this one desperate shot at glory. Their plan seemed simple. Make it partway up Everest, then claim they reached the summit when there were no other climbers around to contradict their story. What could go wrong? As it turns out, everything. On May 26, 2019, they made their big announcement. They claimed they had reached the summit of Mount Everest along with 4 Sherpa guides, and they were the only people who made it to the top that day. Back home in their villages, celebration was incredible. Local newspapers ran stories with their photos. Politicians lined up for photo ops. Their families cried tears of joy and posted about it on every social media platform they could find. For a few beautiful days, these 3 kids from nowhere were the most famous people in their entire region. There was just one teeny tiny problem with their story. According to official expedition records, no one summited Everest on May 26, 2019. Not a single person. The mountain was basically closed due to high winds that would have made a summit attempt completely suicidal. But somehow these 3 amateur climbers and their 4 mystery Sherpas had managed to conquer the mountain when experienced expedition teams with decades of experience had been forced to turn back for their own safety. Naturally, journalists started asking basic questions. And this is where everything fell apart in the most spectacular way possible. We don't know their names. A reporter asked them what should have been a softball question. What were the names of your 4 Sherpa guides? Keep in mind, these were supposedly the people who risked their lives to get them to the summit. The experienced mountain guides who made their dream possible. The heroes who navigated them through the death zone and kept them alive in conditions that kill people regularly. You would think that after spending around 2 months on the world's most dangerous mountain with these 4 people, you might remember their names, or at least their nicknames. The 3 climbers looked at each other like deer caught in headlights. There was an awkward silence that went on way too long. Finally, 21-year-old Shobha quietly admitted, "We don't know their names. Not even a nickname. Not the tall one, or the guy with the beard. Nothing." But it got even better, or should I say worse. When reporters asked to see their summit photos, they refused to show them. They claimed the photos existed, but they wouldn't show them to anyone. Not the media, not Nepal's Department of Tourism, not even their own families, who were throwing celebration parties based on their supposed achievement. Meanwhile, their expedition company, Prestige Adventures, was telling a completely different story. Managing director Deepak Paudel was basically throwing them under the bus, saying these 3 climbers never even made it close to the summit. He told investigators they turned back at Camp 3, which sits at about 23,000 feet. Still high, but more than 6,000 feet below Everest's summit. Here's the final nail in the coffin. Another climber named Chiring Sherpa, who was at base camp that day, said he saw all 3 of them just hanging out there around 12:30 in the afternoon on their supposed summit day. If they had actually summited that morning, they should have been somewhere around 25,000 feet, slowly making their way down through the death zone, not sitting around base camp having dalbat. The evidence was overwhelming. Nepal's Department of Tourism started demanding proof. They wanted photos, videos, GPS data, anything that could verify the climb. The 3 climbers vanished. They stopped returning phone calls. They ignored official requests from the Nepalese government. They basically went into hiding and hoped the whole thing would blow over. Unfortunately for them, the story didn't blow over. Their expedition company started releasing more details about what actually happened. Mingma Norbu Sherpa, who had been guiding Vikas Rana, said he and the other Sherpa guides had given up on the expedition and descended to base camp on May 25th, the day before the alleged summit. Why? Because the climbers simply couldn't move above Camp 3. They were exhausted and physically unable to continue any higher. The Sherpas, seeing there was no chance of reaching the top, made the call to abandon the ascent and get everyone down safely. And that's how 3 young dreamers from small Indian villages completely destroyed their lives with a lie that unraveled in about 48 hours. But believe it or not, we're not done yet. The most shocking case of Everest fraud was still to come. The motivational speaker who lived a lie August 29, 2020, Narendra Singh Yadav, was about to receive the Tenzing Norgay Adventure Award, India's highest honor for adventure sports. The award was going to be presented by President Ram Nath Kovind himself in recognition of his incredible 2016 Everest summit. The 28-year-old from Haryana had spent 4 years as one of India's most celebrated mountaineers. He traveled the country as a motivational speaker, inspiring thousands of young people with his story of conquering the world's highest peak. He spoke at schools and colleges, telling kids that anything was possible if they just worked hard enough and never gave up on their dreams. Just like him, there was just one tiny problem. At the last minute, his name was suddenly pulled from the award ceremony. No public explanation was given. The government just quietly removed him from the list of recipients and hoped nobody would notice. But behind the scenes, India's mountaineering community was in complete uproar. Word was spreading in whispered conversations that something was very, very wrong with his supposed summit. It turned out Narendra Singh Yadav had never actually summited Mount Everest. The discovery. The discovery of this fraud was almost as incredible as the fraud itself. It started when experienced Indian mountaineers began analyzing Yadav's 2016 summit photos in preparation for the award ceremony. What they found was absolutely shocking. The photos showed clear signs of digital manipulation. The lighting was inconsistent. The shadows didn't match. Most damning of all, a Yadav appeared to have been digitally inserted into photos that other climbers clearly took. But the investigation revealed something even more devastating than photoshopped pictures. When authorities started tracing Yadav's actual movements on May 20th, 2016, they discovered he had never even attempted to reach the summit. In fact, Yadav and his climbing partner, Seema Rani Goswami, had been rescued at 26,900 feet. They were still nearly 2,000 feet below the summit, and they were in such bad shape that other climbers had to risk their own lives to save them. Yet somehow, this guy who couldn't even make it to the top without being rescued managed to convince Nepal's Department of Tourism that he had successfully summited. He got an official certificate and everything. But here's the part that's almost too perfect to believe. Remember Satyarup Siddhanta, the software engineer who exposed the Rathods when they stole his photos? Guess whose photos Yadav had stolen and manipulated for his own fake summit pictures? That's right, the same guy. But it gets even better. The ultimate irony, Satyarup wasn't just a random climber whose photos got stolen. He was actually part of the rescue team that saved Narendra Yadav's life in 2016. I was in the rescue team that season, and we rescued him from Everest balcony, Satyarup revealed. He was not able to go ahead of the balcony. I was shocked to see the summit certificate in his hands. Think about how absurd this situation was. Narendra failed so spectacularly on Everest that he needed to be rescued. The guy who helped save his life took photos during his own successful summit. Then, Narendra stole those exact photos, photoshopped his own face into them, and used them to claim he had summited. To be fair, making it within 2,000 feet of Everest's summit is still an incredible achievement. Most people would call that a win. There's a big difference between getting close and actually standing on top, but lots of climbers have turned back at the last stretch. There's no shame in that. But here's the real issue. Instead of owning up to what happened, Narendra spent the next 4 years building his entire reputation on a summit he never reached. From 2016 to 2020, he traveled across India, giving inspirational speeches about his Everest experience. He motivated countless young people to pursue their dreams using a story that was completely fabricated from start to finish. When the fraud was finally exposed, the Indian government had no choice but to take action. In February 2021, Nepal officially revoked Narendra's summit certificate and banned him from climbing in Nepal for 6 years, starting from 2016. The redemption. But here's where Narendra Singh Yadav's story takes a turn nobody saw coming. Most people caught in such an elaborate lie would disappear in shame, maybe move to a different country and start over with a new identity. But not Narendra. On May 20th, 2022, exactly 6 years after his fraudulent summit claim, and right after his ban expired, Narendra quietly returned to Mount Everest, and this time, he actually climbed it. After months of training and acclimatization, Narendra launched his final summit push. In just 6 days, he made his way from base camp to the genuine summit of Mount Everest, setting a record for the fastest ascent by an Indian climber. His expedition was called Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav Fastest Everest Expedition 2022, and they made it to the top at 5:02 a.m. on May 27th. "It feels really good," Narendra told reporters after his descent. "It's like I have been reborn." Can you imagine the mental strength it took to go back to the mountain that had exposed him as a fraud? Most people would never have the courage to face that kind of public humiliation and come back stronger. But it also raises disturbing questions. If Narendra was capable of climbing Everest in 2022, why did he feel the need to fake it in 2016? What kind of pressure was he under that made him risk everything for a fraudulent summit when he might have been capable of the real thing if he had just waited and trained more? the system that creates frauds? The answer reveals something dark about the system that creates these desperate lies. In India, achieving an Everest summit isn't just a personal accomplishment. It's a ticket to an entirely different life. Many Indian states offer cash prizes ranging from 500,000 to 1 million rupees for Everest summiters. That's somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000 US, which in rural India is life-changing money. But financial rewards are just the beginning. Summiters often receive automatic recruitment into police, defense, or government services. If they're already government employees, they can get massive promotions. National awards like the Tenzing Norgay Adventure Award carry incredible prestige and can transform someone's entire social status overnight. In Indian culture, an Everest summit doesn't just elevate the individual, it elevates their entire family and community. Local newspapers celebrate achievements extensively. Politicians line up to be photographed with summiters. There's enormous cultural pressure to succeed once someone publicly declares their attempt. The shame of failure in such circumstances must seem absolutely unbearable. When faced with the choice between admitting defeat and constructing a lie, some chose deception. It wasn't greed that motivated them, but pure desperate fear of disappointing everyone who believed in them. The weak verification system. And here's the really messed up part. Before these cases came to light, Nepal's summit verification process was shockingly weak. There was no mandatory GPS logging. Summit certificates were often issued based solely on submitted photos and guide reports from expedition companies. Nepali officials rarely verified claims directly. The system had created the perfect storm: enormous pressure to succeed, life-changing rewards for achievement, and weak verification processes that made fraud seem not just possible, but easy. What makes these stories particularly heartbreaking is that many of these fraudulent climbers weren't part of India's elite mountaineering circles. The Rathods were police officers with some climbing experience. They'd even claimed to complete the Aussie 10 Challenge in Australia. But Vikas, Shobha, and Ankush were relative amateurs, not known in any serious mountaineering community. Narendra was a government employee. None of them had the extensive high-altitude experience you'd expect from seasoned Everest climbers. They were simply regular people who had been swept up in the cultural obsession with Everest summits. They weren't prepared for the reality of what they were attempting. Lacking proper training and sometimes even basic mountaineering experience, they found themselves physically and mentally incapable of completing the summit. The collateral damage. The tragic part is that their lies didn't just harm themselves. Every fraudulent summit undermines the incredible achievements of legitimate climbers. It makes people question the validity of real accomplishments and tarnishes reputations. But there are heroes in these stories too. People like Satyarup Siddhanta, who could have easily stayed silent when his photos were stolen. Mountain rescue teams who refused to stay quiet about who they actually saved and who they didn't. Expedition companies who eventually started choosing integrity over profit, even when it meant admitting their own clients had failed. The changes. Since these major fraud cases came to light, both Nepal and India have completely overhauled their verification processes. GPS tracking is now often required for summit claims. Photo analysis has become much more sophisticated, with experts trained to spot digital manipulation. Expedition companies now face much harsher punishments for helping clients with false summit claims. The age of easy fraud is over. What these stories really mean. These stories aren't really about mountaineering fraud when you get down to it. They're about what happens when society creates impossible expectations and then offers life-changing rewards for meeting them. They're about ordinary people who weren't prepared for their dreams to become nightmares. But Mount Everest doesn't care about your motivations. It doesn't care about the promises you made to your spouse, the hopes of your village, or the dreams of your family. It judges everyone with the same cold indifference. In the end, the mountain always tells the truth, even if it takes 4 years for that truth to come out. The Rathods wanted to prove their love and dedication. They made a sacred vow to conquer Everest before having children. But instead of achieving their dream, they destroyed their careers and reputations with poorly photoshopped photos that a software engineer spotted in seconds. Vikas, Shobha, and Ankush wanted to transform their family's social status. They scraped together every rupee for one shot at glory. But their lie unraveled in 48 hours when they couldn't remember the names of their supposed Sherpa guides. Narendra wanted recognition and respect. He spent 4 years as a celebrated motivational speaker, inspiring thousands. But he was building his entire identity on photos stolen from the man who saved his life. The truth always surfaces. Some lies are written in stone, but on Everest, they're written in ice. And ice, as these climbers learned, always melts under scrutiny. The mountain doesn't forgive fraud. It doesn't accept shortcuts. It demands truth, preparation, and respect. You can Photoshop yourself onto the summit. You can claim you were there when the mountain was closed. You can steal someone else's photos and build a career on their achievement. But eventually, the truth comes out. Sometimes it's a software engineer scrolling Facebook who recognizes his own photos. Sometimes it's expedition, companies releasing the real story. Sometimes it's the rescue team that saved you speaking up about what actually happened. The lies might work for days, months, even years, but Everest always has the last word, and that word is always the truth.